Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm It's Robbie Rhino, and in today's video we're taking a look at the T-72BM. This is an Era 3 heavy tank for the Eastern Alliance in the Cold War game mode. It's a Soviet heavy tank, as the name suggests, and it is a mid-level Era 3 heavy tank, and it leads on to the T-72BU, which I'm very much looking forward to getting because this tank has been an absolute blast to play through and is very powerful. And if this was the end of the line, then I wouldn't be surprised, because it can put out some crazy damage numbers, and it's given me my highest damage in WoTC's console so far. I have the gameplay to show you in this video, and that is the third gameplay if you want to skip ahead. But if you want to learn more about the tank, I'll be telling you everything you need to know about the T-72BM in this video. I'm going to be comparing it to three of its mid-level Era 3 heavy tanks in the form of the Type 85-3, the Challenger 1 and the M1A1 Abrams. I'm going to be showing you my commander and equipment setup and how it affects the statistics of the T-72BM. I'll show you the armor profile in the garage, and I'll talk you through the three gameplays. This tank is a very good mix of user-friendly armor. You have a sloped upper plate, you have lots of spaced armor, composite armor on the sides and your turret, protecting you from heat and ATGM ammunition. You have a great 125mm gun. You have the option to choose the 125mm gun package that you can fire ATGMs as well. It's got great mobility and it's a lot of fun to play in Era 3 of the Cold War game mode. So let's get stuck straight into talking about the T-72BM and comparing it to three of its competitors. This is my spreadsheet that I have created to compare these tanks. If you haven't seen my sort of guides and my reviews before, red is the worst statistic, blue is somewhere in the middle, and green is the best, and these yellow boxes are the updated stats with my commander and equipment setup added, but I'll talk you through that in just a little bit. But we're going to get stuck straight in and talk about the hit points and the view range. So in terms of hit points, as you can see, it's the joint worst in this comparison, but only by 100 hit points. It has 3,800 hit points, and it also has the joint worst view range in this comparison at 480 meters, which is quite some way off the M1A1 Abrams, which has 525 meters. But as a sort of brawling heavy, you're going to be on the front lines and the view range won't matter too much, and you also have that true vision system sort of to rely upon. You're very mobile, so you can get to the fight very quickly, and you're probably going to get some spotting assistance doing it that way anyway, so that's not something that you should worry about too much. And the hit points you can restore with the enhanced hole patch kit, and 3,800 hit points can go quite a long way if you are sensible about how you use your armor and what tanks that you choose to engage with. And now we get on to the mobility, which is one of the best things about the T-72BM, and although it isn't the best in every comparison, a lot of it's blue, it's somewhere in the middle. It has a couple of worse statistics in terms of its reverse speed and its turret reverse, but you can improve that with mobility equipment. You have a 1,130 horsepower engine, a power to weight ratio of 25.29. You can go 67 kilometers an hour forwards, 23 kilometers an hour backwards. Your hull traverse is pretty good at 40 degrees a second, and your turret traverse is 34 degrees a second. So in terms of the actual engine power, you can see that it is quite a long way off the Challenger 1 and the M1A1 Abrams. However, it's a much smaller profile, lighter heavy tank, and that means that the power to weight ratio is pretty similar to the Challenger 1, and it is only a small bit off of what the M1 Abrams has, which is 26.76 power to weight compared to the T-72BM's 25.29, and it is a little bit better than the Type 85-3, but they're all very good in terms of their mobility. The forward speed is 67 kilometers an hour, isn't too bad at all. It's better than the Type 85-3. It's just a little bit worse than the M1A1 Abrams, and it does fall some way short of the Challenger 1, but all in all, it's not too bad at all, and you can boost that, like I said, with the mobility equipment, which I'll talk you through in just a little bit. and that goes for the reverse speed as well. In terms of your traverse speed, 40 degrees a second isn't too bad on the whole, and 34 degrees a second. Although it's pretty poor on your turret, you can boost that with my commander and equipment setup, and I'll talk you through after we've talked through the gun, and you can get that to a pretty respectable level. You have to bear in mind that the Challenger 1 and the M1A1 Abrams would play more of a hold down play style, and this is more of a sort of faster, brawling, all-in kind of heavy tank, similar to the Type 85-3, and the mobility suits that absolutely fine, so the reverse speed won't matter too much because you're not going to be using too many ridge lines on the battlefield. Just remember to try and go away facing forwards if you're going to be retreating rather than reversing out of trouble. And now we get on to the guns that all of these tanks have. So the T-72BM has a 125mm gun, the same as the Type 85-3, and the Challenger 1 and the M1A1 Abrams have 120mm guns. The T-72BM's ammunition is APF SDS as standard and premium, and you can either choose a package which allows you to fire ATGMs as your third ammunition choice, or heat rounds, as I'll go over here and show you on the Tankopedia on the World Tanks console webpage. You can fire heat rounds that will have 550 alpha damage with 650mm of penetration, but I like to use the ATGM gun because I like to fire them at the start and to finish off targets at the end of the battle. In terms of the shell velocity on these rounds, it's 1700 meters a second on the standard and on the premium APF SDS rounds, and 350 meters a second on the ATGMs. You have 606mm of standard pen, 697mm of premium pen, which is absolutely fantastic, and you have a very good penetration value of 750 on your ATGMs. The alpha damage is 550 on the standard and the premium ammunition, and 1200 on those nasty ATGMs, which I like to load up at the start of the battle to start off with a nice big boom into another heavy tank that has gotten forward really quickly and will start to regret their life. The alpha damage in comparison to the Type 85-3, although it's the same caliber of gun, is 30 less, but you do have the best penetration in this comparison. You're going to have better alpha damage than the 120mm guns on the Challenger 1 and on the M1A1 Abrams. The shell velocity is the best in this comparison, the joint best with the M1A1 Abrams at 1700 meters a second, and you're only slightly off the Type 85-3's APF SDS rounds in the premium ammunition at 1730 meters a second. So great shell velocity, best in class penetration on your standard and premium rounds, and 750mm of penetration on your ATGMs is absolutely fantastic. I would highly recommend using the ATGM package because it's just a unique choice to have, and heat can be largely useless against a lot of tanks that have a lot of space armor like they do in Era 3 of Cold War. And now we get on to the gun handling and the DPM of the T-72BM. You have an aim time of 2.3 seconds, an accuracy of 0.26, a DPM of 4075.5. Your reload is 8.1 seconds. You can carry 45 rounds of ammunition, and this does include the ATGM should you choose that package. You have 6 degrees of gun depression and 14 degrees of elevation. As you can see, there is a lot of red here for the T-72BM, and although that might seem like a really bad thing, it's not too bad at all because you can get these values to a very respectable level, and you have to bear in mind this is a low-profile, well-armoured tank that has some pretty good ammunition, great penetration, and you have to sort of balance it all out, and these, although it's red, it isn't bad statistics at all. As you can see here, the best in class in terms of aim time is the Challenger 1, which is 1.5 seconds, and it's also the best accuracy at 0.23. 0.26 on the T-72BM isn't too bad at all, and it isn't as bad as the 0.28 on the Type 85-3. Although the DPM is the lowest in this comparison, it's only about 500 less than the M1A1 Abrams, which has the best DPM in this comparison, only 200 less than the Challenger 1, and it is only sort of 100 less than the Type 85-3, so it isn't too far off, and it's still a pretty nasty DPM if you catch tanks out in the open. The one downside is the gun depression and the elevation, sort of worst in class. 6 degrees of gun depression can be annoying to use on all of the ridgelines. But like I said, the Challenger 1 M1A1 Abrams are more hold down ridgeline warriors, and the T-72BM and the Type 85-3 are more all-in heavy tanks brawlers, and it won't matter too much if you play that kind of playstyle. Side scrape, go in, that kind of thing, face hug people or go alongside them and try to get them to ricochet off your armor. But yeah, do bear in mind that your elevation is pretty poor, as is your gun depression. And now I'll talk you through my commander and equipment setup and how it affects the statistics of the T-72BM. So in terms of my equipment, I run advanced loader, gun stabilizer and advanced powertrain. I run advanced powertrain from when the tank was stock, but I would now recommend probably switching over to improve ventilation, just to improve the gun handling and the DPM that little bit more. And yeah, I'm basically recommended what I should do to myself, but I highly recommend taking off advanced powertrain and putting on the improved ventilation, but then you will suffer in terms of the mobility just a little bit. And in terms of my commander, I run 6th Sense, Spawn Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Armour Angling and Track Mechanic. One thing that you could use instead of maybe Run and Gun or something like that, one of the gun handling skills is Controlled Impact, because a lot of people do like to ram all of the lighter, medium and light tanks in Cold War, and you will do a substantial amount of damage. And if you like that kind of gameplay, then use Control Impact. But if not, I think that's a pretty good setup to have on a all-round kind of heavy tank. You have gun handling perks, armor angling to reduce how much damage you take in, track mechanic to get your tracks on just a bit more quickly, rapid loading to improve your DPM, and 6th Sense and Born Leader are what I have on every commander. So with that commander and equipment setup, I now have an engine horsepower of 1186.5. My power to weight's gone up to 26.56. I can now go 70.3 kilometers an hour forwards, 24.15 kilometers an hour backwards. My whole traverse has stayed the same, and my turret traverse has gone up to 39.01 degrees a second, and that is a very respectable level. Having 40 degrees a second basically on the hull and turret means that you can keep up with tanks trying to circle you. And in terms of my gun handling and DPM, my aim time is now 2.21. I now have an accuracy of 0.18. My DPM shot up to 5,247, and my reload for my 125mm gun is now 6.29, and for the ATGM rounds it's 23.3 seconds. So that's enough talking about the comparison with the Type 85-3, the Challenger 1 and the M1A1 Abrams. We're going to head over now to the garage, have a look at the armor profile, and then I'll talk you through the gameplay. So here we are in the garage, in the armor viewer, having a look at the T-72BM's armor layout. The first thing that I'd like to say about the T-72BM and its armor layout is that there isn't one particular aspect of this tank that I'd be happy just sitting still in front of another tank in Era 3 of Cold War. However, when you are moving, there are lots of different armoured plates, lots of different spaced armoured sections, and it can bounce quite a lot of shells if you use it effectively. Keep moving. Something like an M1A1 Abrams or a Challenger 1, I'd feel more comfortable on a ridgeline, a bit more hold down. You could bounce a few more shells that way, but because you don't have the gun depression, this is a lower profile tank. You're going to be brawling, getting up close and personal. I'd recommend getting alongside the tanks and trying to get them to ricochet off the sides of your tank, the sides of your armour where there's more sort of spaced armour, all of that explosive, reactive and composite armour that protects you from heat and ATGM shells. But we're going to have a look at the thickest part of the armour, and that's this part here around the mantlet of the gun, which is 540mm thick, and as you'll see, that isn't really that thick for an Era 3 heavy tank. That can be penetrated very easily, and there isn't any spaced armour over that section. The whole of the turret ring is a great weak point if this tank is face hugging you and you want to be wary of people shooting you in the turret ring. The left and right of the turret here is 430mm, and if you shoot below the spaced armoured flaps that you'll see coming out at the front, left and right, this should be an easy penetration for most tanks, or most medium and heavy tanks, and even most light tanks in Era 3 of Cold War. You have this section on top of the turret, so if you're above it, of 225mm of armour, but if you're above it you should pretty much be able to go through most of the tank here if you have a decent amount of penetration. The next thing to note is the base level of the armour on the upper plate is 175mm, which is sloped back, and there is a section of spaced armour which I'll talk about in just a little bit to add on top of that. It's going to be more effective. You're angling like this and you're moving and you're wiggling side to side. You might get the odd ricochet and they'll shoot the far side, but if you're above it, shoot down on it and you should be able to go through it. Just don't do it with heat rounds or ATGMs, because you won't do as much damage, or you will just get your shell absorbed completely. Now we get on to the cupola, which is 150mm thick. That's a very good weak point to shoot if they're face hugging you and you can't get a shell into the turret ring. You should be able to hit this, and it is quite a large weak spot for the good accuracy tanks have in Era 3 of Cold War. And now we're going to go on to talk about the lower plate. So the base bit here is 120mm, and it is sloped back, and there is sort of a section that overlaps the upper plate onto the lower plate, so you have to be wary of that, but you should be able to penetrate this pretty damn easy with any tank that you're going to come across in Era 3 of Cold War. Then you see all of these different sections on the turret. There's 90mm of space there. The front side is 80mm, the front portion of the tank. The actual base armour of the side of this tank, of the hull, is 80mm, 70mm to the rear, and then you have 60mm of spaced armour all over the front of this tank. The gun is 55mm. You have different sections of different spaced armour all across this tank here. You have these side skirts here, so shoot below that and you should be able to go through the hull and damage this tank. Don't shoot ATGMs or heat into the side of this tank, because it will just get absorbed. The tracks there are 20mm. You have 20mm of spaced armour all over the lower plate and some more on top of the upper hull. If you see anything that looks like it's bricks, that's going to be explosive reactive armour. That's going to be there to protect against heat and against ATGM ammunition, so don't shoot there. Shoot where there isn't any brickwork, any spaced armour, and it should be golden. You'll see there's lots of here, the explosive reactive armour, all of those sort of brick patterns. So if you're going to shoot towards the rear of the tank, shoot above the side skirts there. Don't shoot towards where the bricks are, and you should hopefully be able to penetrate this tank with ATGMs. But if you're flat on side, you should be able to penetrate with most rounds. It's just a case of using the mobility to keep your tank as sort of wiggly as possible, angle at 45 degrees, side scrape out, try and get people to bait into shooting your side skirts and your thickest parts of your armour. If you're face hugging this tank, shoot the turret ring, shoot the cupola. You should be able to go through even the mantlet if you have a decent penetration round. If you're above it, shoot on the upper plate, you should be fine. The lower plate, if you're sort of level with it, you should be able to go through. Be wary of shooting ATGMs into the side and heat ammunition, because it's probably going to get absorbed. But for the most part, it's not too hard to penetrate. It's just it can pull off frustrating bounces when you're playing against it, and it can save your life sometimes when you're moving around in this tank and it pulls off miracle bounces. It's not to be relied upon, but it still can block a hell of a lot of damage, which I'll hopefully talk you through in the gameplay. So that's enough talking about the T-72BM. We're going to get stuck into the first gameplay. So we're into the first gameplay of today's video, and we're here on Mannheim in the T-72BM. As you'll see in the bottom left hand corner, by the amount of hit points that I have at 3,600 in this particular game, I was still using the stock turret and the stock gun. That's why I am running full premium APF SDS rounds. I haven't got any ATGMs to use with the stock turret and stock gun package, so I'm trying to get through the grind as quick as possible by improving my penetration with the premium rounds, and I'm still making a good profit doing it this way, and I managed to have this pretty damn decent game along the way. you're still seeing how good the mobility is with the T-72BM, and although it isn't best in class, it's still good enough to get across the map really quickly and get to where you need to go to. So I'm going along the centre of the map, just seeing if I can spot anything coming through the centre, because I'm able to duck this side of these buildings into hard cover, and I'm hoping to go towards the north to see if any tanks are trying to flank around and go down our eastern flank. And I'm going to try and get some crossfire on these heavy tanks that I'm spotting straight ahead of me, and yeah, just try and use the hard cover to my advantage. Very low profile tank, as you can see here, so they've probably only got my turret to shoot at if they're straight ahead of me. And I also have this bridge to the left of me that I can use as hard cover, but also go up on top of and get shots down the bridge to the left and also straight over towards the north. It's slightly annoying to use the T-72BM 6 degrees of gun depression like I am trying to do here on this bridge, but if you angle correctly and you just choose your timing correctly when you go over the ridge lines, then you can still make it work and it can still be effective. As you can see here, just pop over, get the shot in really quickly with the fantastic gun handling that this tank has, pull back, and even though the reverse speed isn't brilliant, we managed to pull back in time so that we did bounce a shell directly in front of us off of our turret. Tanks coming in from the side here and below me. Unfortunately, as we were pummeling that Stingray 2, the T-72BM on the enemy team gets an ATGM into us. He managed to find a section that didn't or wasn't covered in a lot of the explosive reactive armour, and he managed to penetrate us there, and that shows you how devastating the ATGMs on this tank can be. Unfortunately, it wasn't me showing you that, it was one of the enemy tanks, but luckily I had help from my teammates. I say thank you, and yeah, with the help of our teammates, we've already pushed our damage total up to 3,564, and now just over 4,000 with that shot into the Chieftain Mark 11 that sat on the other side of the bridge. We managed to get a second shell in there, just showing how good the DPM is on this tank, and although it isn't the best in class, again, it's still a very decent number, and you can make some good use of the DPM on this tank to boost your damage totals. You're seeing here the struggles with the gun depression, so I'm just going to reverse up sort of half side scrape on top of this bridge there, just so that they have the side of my tank to shoot at. Hopefully I would bounce some shells if they were to try and shoot up at me. And now I'm just going to try and help these friendly heavy tanks stop this push here by the enemies on this side of the map. That BMP3 gets taken out, and now I'm going to try and flank around and get a shot into this M1A2. You'll see in here the reverse speed is quite slow. I was just hoping to get a shot in, but fortunately the M1A2 uses his great reverse speed to drive out right in front of us. We get a shot into him and he gets taken out by the Leopard 2A5. And now we're just going to try and go forth and get some more damage in this game. It looks like it's going to be a victory, although you never know. And we're going to try and get to those heavy tanks in the south of the map as quickly as possible. And on terrain like this, where it's hard terrain and lots of open space to move across, it's very good mobility even when you're stock. And I don't even know if I've got the fully upgraded engine in this replay, but as you can see, we're still going along above 60 kilometers an hour. And yeah, from someone that played World War II basically for most of my battles, the mobility in Cold War still astounds me when I switch between the modes, especially when you play something like the Armadillo or a BMP3 or something like that. It's absolutely insane. But it's 10 versus 6 at the moment, and we're just going to restore some of our health using the enhanced hole patch kit. We're going to try and get a shot on the move, and you'll see that it's not the best on the move, so that's why I do run the run and gun, but you might want to consider taking that out, like I said when I was talking about the commander and equipment setup. But now we're just going to use this ridgeline in front of us to try and get some shells into enemy tanks that are above us. There's a lot of health in front of us, and we do have to be very careful. That M1A2 has got the better DPM out of the two of us, has the better turret armour, but with these premium rams I'm able to go through the front of the turret ring no problem. We get a shell into that T-72BU who is crossing, and I'm just trying to constantly wiggle, move backwards and forwards, reverse when I am being targeted by an opponent, use hard cover to side scrape off of, and I'm just trying to make me as awkward as possible a target, because I know I can't reliably bounce, but I'm just trying to make it as awkward as possible, and basically you're just hoping for a bounce, and you're just able to fire whilst you're sort of wiggling around. The gun handling is great, the mobility is perfectly adequate, and the DPM is pretty nice, and we're already at 7.7k damage. We blocked 1000 damage, and we got a little bit of assistance at 128 damage. There's a platoon of 3 heavy tanks left on the enemy team, and I'm just going to try and see if I can get as much damage as possible at the end of this battle. Waiting for a shot on this T-72BU. We had a bit of gun depression problems there. I should have just gone down, but I was worried that he might target me. However, we do come down and chase him. We put a shot into our teammate there as they went in front of the T-72BU. And then we bounce off of the top of his tank, but luckily we have the ability to go and search for the remaining enemies on the enemy team. We get a shot into the enemy T-72BU, he puts one into us. Fortunately, we managed to bounce just by wiggling. You see I'm wiggling side to side at a 45-degree angle to the left and right. We managed to bounce his shell, and if people aren't firing premium, more than often than not, you will bounce when you're doing that kind of thing and you're in movement. But fortunately for us, we push our damage total over that 10k mark to exactly 10k damage, and that's the end of that round as the Leopard 2A5 finishes off the T-72BU, and that's a fantastic game in a stock T-72BM. We finish in second place with 1 kill, 10k damage, 1085 blocked. That's a second class mastery, 1376 base experience points, and we had some kind of op going, so I made 1 million silver in that game, and yeah, we managed to get another module by the looks of it. So we're going to head on now into the second game of today's video and see how we perform in that one. So we're now into the second game of today's video. We're here on Rosenia, and we're in the fully upgraded T-72BM, as well as having one of the skins. I think there's 4 skins available for the T-72BM, and this is one of my favourites. I think it looks pretty cool. I think it was on offer when I got it at 2,000 gold, and yeah, maybe it makes me play better because this is a better game, or maybe it's just because we're fully upgraded, who knows. But yeah, we are fully upgraded, so you can see that we have 3,800 hit points now, so 200 more than the previous game, and we also have ATGMs at our disposal. I carry 17 rounds of standard APF SDS, 22 premium APF SDS, and I carry the full quota of ATGMs, which is 6. And I usually only use about 2 to 3, so I might want to consider carrying more standard and premium rounds, although these ATGMs can come in useful. In terms of gameplay, when I'm fully upgraded, I started to play the ATGMs, or load an ATGM at the start of the battle. Whilst I was getting into position, I found that by the time I got into a location that I wanted to be in, like here on Rosenia in the sort of castle area, by the time I got here I was loaded with an ATGM, and I was hoping to surprise a heavy tank and absolutely blap his health, switch to my 125mm gun, and then just unload on them. In this particular battle, I'm being a little bit wary because it's just me and this heavy tank fighting all of these tanks in the castle. I don't want to be overwhelmed. I have some support in the sort of A1, A2 area, but I'm not sure if they're AFK or not because they haven't left the base yet, which is kind of, you know, typical for that kind of thing, isn't it though? But yeah, we get an ATGM there into the sort of side of the T-72 BU on the enemy team. We aimed just above the side skirts there, so it penetrated with that fantastic 750mm of penetration. Now we're restoring some of our health, and we're just trying to get shells in as we back off, and I'm thinking, unfortunately, now I'm just going to have to escape because we're going to be absolutely overrun in that position. I feel like a little bit bad for leaving my teammate there fighting off the rest of them, but if I didn't leave now, I would have been dead very quickly, and I'm going to go over here towards the eastern side of the map, and I'm going to try and yeah, team up with my teammates, try and flush out this eastern side, then we can go back and try and defend as the enemies push towards our base. And you're seeing here that it's very good with the mobility just to fly around the battlefield, getting shots into tanks, swarm them. If you're on a platoon of these things, it's an absolutely fantastic kind of tank to swarm. The enemies don't know where to shoot, they're more likely to try and panic, and well, not try and panic, they're more likely to panic and miss their shells, or just shoot one of your thickest parts of your armour and bounce off of you. And these are fantastic pack tanks, supporting maybe your more aggressive top era 3 heavy tanks, and you go in as a support tank and as a distraction, and use all mobility to get around. As you can see here, I'm trying to wiggle as much as possible. The Leopard 2A4, which has good penetration, still manages to get through us, but you've got to do everything you can in every situation to try and avoid getting penetrated by your opponents. There's no point just sitting still. You might as well try and bounce, because you might get lucky. Even if you had no armour, they might just shoot your gun or something. So always recommend wiggling. But in this tank, back and forth, left and right, 45-degree angle, try and get them to bait them into shooting your sort of side skirts into your tracks, and go alongside tanks, go up and down the side of them, trying to get them to bait into shooting your turret or missing, because you're very low profile. And we managed to ram that M60A6 just as he gets taken out, which is unfortunate for us, but we save a few hit points, and now we're going to go after this enemy T-72BM. We are on half health, he is on full health, but we do have the help of our friendly team. I'm going to track this T-72BM, and I'm going to continuously ram the T-72BM to make sure I'm damaging his tracks every time I'm ramming him, to keep his tracks on, and I'm getting all of this juicy assistance as our teammates are helping me take him out. Eventually he either repairs, or his tracks just manually automatically repair, I should say, and he gets away, but he's a one-shot now, and our tanks are going after him. So I'm going to go after this VFM 5 light tank, and I'm going to ramp up on top of him, get some ramming damage, now reverse into him, and he gets taken out. Then we go through here, take out the M1A2, and it's just an absolute beast, this tank, for going forward, ramming things, using your tank as a battering ram, using your DPM, wiggling, using your armour, and it's a fantastic brawling tank. And if you don't like that kind of hold down gameplay using the ridge lines, this would be the heavy tank for you. That T-72BU has turned for that medium tank, so we're just going to go in for a ram. I was trying to track him, get some more assistance, and we're trying to help out our medium tank here. He takes out the T-72BU, and it's just one tank left, and we're over the 10k mark. We're now 3 shy of 11k damage. We've got 2.4k assistance, and we've blocked 580 damage, and it's just this T-72BU left, but he's a little bit further away. I'm hoping I can crest this ridgeline and get a snapshot into him, but it looks like he's behind the rock, and he gets taken out by the Challenger 2, and I fire in celebration. So that's another good round in the T-72BM. We finished in the MVP slot with 3 kills, 10,997 direct damage, 2,471 assistance, 1,605 base experience points, 155,000 silver profit, and an all-round decent game. So now we're going to head on into the third and final replay of today's video, which is my highest ever damage I've done in World of Tanks console. So then, we're now into the third and final game of today's video, and we're here on Fredvang in the T-72BM. Once again, we are fully upgraded. This time, however, I do have the full allocation of ATGMs at 6, and also I've chosen just to load a full allocation of premium APF SDS rounds. Although the penetration is great on the standard and on the premium, I just wanted that extra little boost. I'm just seeing what I can do in this tank if I push it a bit further, yeah, get a bit of extra penetration on every round and see if I have a better game. And it just so happens that I ended up with this game, which is the highest damage game I've had in World of Tanks console so far. I'm sure the more Era 3 games I play in this, and when I get more Era 3 tanks, I'll have higher damage games. But for now, this is the highest damage game I've had so far in the game, and I hope that you enjoy it, because I certainly did. So we've used our mobility to get to the centre of the map, and I'm going to use this downslope to negate the gun depression. We have an ATGM loaded, and Hopefully we can get into the BMP3 here, take off some of his health, and boom, we take off all of his health. We ammo rack that BMP3 because he has no armor, and our ATGMs absolutely wreck that guy's game. And we're already up to 2,850, and sometimes you need that little bit of luck if you're going for really high damage games. And we had it there, and that's why I always try and carry some ATGMs, and especially carry them at the start of the battle to get an unsuspecting shot into a poor little victim like a BMP3. And it's nice to take out a light tank early doors because it means that they're going to have less vision, less mobility at the end of the game. And now I'm going to set up a defensive location because I noticed there's a lot of heavy tanks coming behind me, coming down the eastern side, and they're going to swarm towards our base. We have the high ground to the left of me, and I'm trying to get a crossfire as they shoot up this part of the map. And this is the perfect kind of place for me. I'm sort of just tall enough to get over this ridgeline, just expose my turret, so hopefully I'm going to bounce a few shells in this position. And with the higher penetration premium rounds that I'm running, I should be able to penetrate these tanks no problem with the higher, the height advantage, I should say. Unfortunately, one of the MBT-70s gets a shell into us, I believe, or it might have been an ATGM. Either way, we get set on fire, which is a little bit unfortunate. We lose some hit points, but we do manage to run our enhanced whole patch kit, I should say, and get some of our hit points back. We're now up to 2,581 hit points, which is hopefully going to be enough to carry us throughout this game. And now we're just trying to fight off this Challenger 1. I'm trying to track him in place because I know I have some support to the left of me with that light tank who got an ATGM into him, and who is now going circling that Challenger 1 and distracting him. And I'm just trying to keep moving as I'm reloading in case I'm going to be getting shot out by any tank. That BMP3 does a fantastic job there, gets an ATGM and shuts down that Challenger 1. And I'm just trying to play this support role here, getting shells in. Whenever I'm reloaded, I'm firing, trying to get into a position to fire. And we managed to stop that advance down that eastern flank. And now I'm going to turn my attentions to the heavy tanks that are located right in the centre of the map. This Type 72BM is going out right into the middle, and we're just trying to get as many shells in as possible. I sense this could be a very high damage game. Already we're up to 9.8k damage in the first 4 minutes, and that just hopefully shows you the power of this tank. Even though the DPM isn't the absolute best, you can get it to a pretty damn good level, and it's very powerful tank, a very good all-round heavy tank. There's no shots there, so we're going to swivel around using the enhanced mobility that we have with our commander and equipment setup, and come over here and try and get a shell on this T-72BU. Unfortunately, we just do critical damage to the tracks of that T-72BU, but hopefully our second shell goes in. It does, it tracks him, and we get some assistance, as well as getting some more damage that takes us over the 10k mark. It's 7 versus 6, so it's a very close game. All of the action has just happened in this central location, so fortunately I was able to kind of stay within the vicinity of the rock to my left and use it to my advantage. And now we're just going to put round after round into this T-72BU. His tracks don't seem to be able to repair in time, so he either was just sat there or his crew or commander wasn't very good. We set him on fire for some extra damage, and now we're just trying to fire on reload at these tanks. We have the height advantage. The penetration is more than enough with this premium round to go through all of these tanks frontally, and even with the standard rounds I'd still be having a damn good time where I am at the moment. This ridgeline is good for wiggling around on. It means that when I sort of fall backwards, my upper plate's going to be at a pretty good level, and there'll be some auto ricochet angles as well. I'm going in front of my friendly here, just trying to maybe get this leopard to take a shot at me so he doesn't take him out, and with the assistance of our teammates there, we managed to take him out. That takes us to 13,969 direct damage and 1,397 assistance. And it's 4 versus 3, so it's still a close game, and I'm just trying to not overexpose myself too much. I want to be aggressive and I want to get the damage in, but I don't want to throw this game away But I noticed the heavy tank to the left of me is going in, and I'm going to go in and support him because that means that the enemy heavy tank will be distracted. Unfortunately, he's kind of in the way here a little bit, but we do manage to get around with our mobility, get a shot into him, and he gets taken out. And it's just this light tank left. Haven't seen him for a while, so I was kind of guessing that he was going to be over here somewhere, and I was hoping to use my remaining hit points to maybe even get a ram in on this remaining light tank. Unfortunately, he gets spotted battling our heavy tanks in the middle, but he's coming this way, and I'm going to try and line up a nice ram here, get a shot into him. He sets us on fire with one of his own shots, but we do manage to catch him with a ram, just clipping him, taking him out, and that pushes our damage total to 15,776, 1,397 assistance, 4 kills. We get the ace tanker there, 1,806 base experience, and we also managed to still make a profit of 86,890 with a premium account and firing full premium. So that's the best game I've had in World of Tanks console so far. It's a very powerful tank. I hope that you've enjoyed this comprehensive rundown and comparison of the T-72BM with its competitors, and also enjoyed the gameplay. Thank you all so much for getting me over 900 subscribers. 1,000 subs is in line of sight, and hopefully we'll get that in the coming months. But for now, until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.